Water is an essential factor in sustaining life on Earth. Without it, the ecosystem would simply not function properly due to the imbalance that is created. Therefore, the importance of water must not be underestimated, as each organism, including us humans, rely on it to survive. For us to know more about the role of water in the ecosystem, let us tackle the biogeochemical cycle. A biogeochemical cycle shows the flow of chemical substances such as water, carbon, sulfur, and more around the Earth's various subsystems. The water cycle contains various processes where water changes its state as it travels from the atmosphere, lithosphere, and hydrosphere. To simplify this cycle, the process goes in this manner. Water in its liquid form evaporates to become water vapor. Water vapor then condenses as it becomes clouds. These clouds will then undergo precipitation where water will become rain or possibly snow. This precipitation will then run off and move across the land as it may move into plants where it can undergo transpiration, or they may settle as groundwater where they will eventually evaporate and repeat the cycle. This explains how water moves around the Earth and forms the various water bodies and how it affects the climate that we experience.
Humans have lived on planet Earth for thousands of years, but with the recent events that have been happening to our world, such as the deterioration of the planet's natural resources, have we taken note of the role of humans in this deterioration? Anthropogenic activity has had a drastic effect on our environment. Anthropogenic activity refers to man-made activities that may cause direct or indirect changes to the planet's ecosystem. It is worth remembering Le Chatelier's principle, wherein a system that is in equilibrium, when it is disturbed by other factors, will tend to adapt and counteract these factors to maintain its state of equilibrium. The anthropogenic activity that affects the water cycle, we may attribute this to the creation of hydroelectrical infrastructures, the dumping of chemical and industry waste, the interruption of natural pathways and runoff of water, and a lot more examples. These anthropogenic activities have made a significant impact on the environment, especially in the accumulation of pollution on our water resources. Within the more recent cases of pollution in our water resources is the emergence of microplastics. Microplastics are usually found in health and cosmetics products as they act as exfoliates for their solution. Some microplastics also come from debris that naturally breaks down into smaller particles. It is because of the irresponsible waste disposal that a lot of plastic materials end up in our water bodies. These microplastics are often mistaken for food by marine life, which may harm their long-term health as the ingestion of microplastics can expose the consumer to toxic chemicals which are used to create plastic.
Invasive species. How microplastics in water contribute to the increase of the invasive species. Invasive species are organisms that are introduced to an environment that causes a negative change to the specific environment. These species usually adapt quickly and are quick to reproduce. This exemplifies their negative effects as they are quick to influence the native species of a specific area. There are direct and indirect effects that invasive species have on the environment. The direct effects include the reduction of resources due to the increase in competition for the species and the possibility of these species carrying or causing diseases to other species in the environment. The indirect effects include the disruption of the food web as well as the disruption of the diversity of species, as there is a possibility that the invasive species may take over to become the dominant species within a certain ecosystem. The presence of plastics in large bodies, such as oceans, has contributed to the movement of invasive species to other environments. These species can use plastic debris to travel, as these plastics degrade due to the heat of the sun and the movement of the water around it. They can expose the invasive species to chemicals and harmful microbes, which may be present in microplastics according to the recent studies.
Epigenetics. Let us now tackle about epigenetics and how it applies to invasive species. First, what is epigenetics? Epigenetics is a study of how external factors and the environment may change the way that a DNA sequence is read. These relate to invasive species because recent studies, such as one by Lyle, found evidence of epigenetics within invasive species of birds in Kenya. This is essentially how species adapt to any changes to their environment through modifications in histone and DNA. Phenotypic variations led to the emergence of traits that may allow invasive species to thrive even though they naturally lack genetic diversity.
Anthropogenic activity continues to be the root of the negative changes that our environment experiences. Water, alongside the water cycle, is one of the main resources on the planet that are affected by these activities. Therefore, it is important for us, humans, to minimize the impact that our activities have on our hydrosphere, as water is essential to life on Earth. We should also make a change by seeking alternatives, especially for materials like plastic, as tons of plastic waste end up in water bodies around the world. We should also be more aware of our actions to combat the spread of invasive species in our environment. This is to protect the balance and diversity of ecosystems. It is time for us to care and act towards saving our planet's resources, as these are the ones that sustain the life and existence of all species.